Hey, good morning, everybody. Got another quote for you today. This quote it touches on multiple subject areas that are extremely relevant in my daily life today, which I'll explain after I read the quote. So, the quote itself is from Pythagoras. So, the the historical lover of triangles. Here it goes: educate the children, and it won't be necessary to punish the men. Once again, educate the children, and it won't be necessary to punish the men. I've been talking a little bit in previous videos about the importance of legacy and the obligation we have to not only carry on the legacy from our forefathers for generations and generations, back farther than to where we personally knew any of them, but also the obligation to instill upon our offspring the importance of that legacy and to carry that forward and to be extremely deliberate about what that legacy looks like, to give them a map, so to speak, of where they've been and to help them figure out where potentially to go in the future. And I've talked about that on a societal level and a personal level. And taking Pythagoras' quote very much on a societal level, in the U.S., we have a very high incarceration rate. We take almost a pride in the rule of law and order within our country, as we should, because the ideal of law and order is founded in the concept that no individual is above the law, and that the law is a collective bargain amongst members of a society, that we will not go outside of the bounds of what we deem appropriate behavior. And if we do, each person is held responsible for their own individual actions. And there's something about the importance of individual sovereignty to make decisions and to know the consequences and to suffer consequences accordingly should they break the rules of that. However, that line of thought when not coupled with a sense of obligation and responsibility for the society to the individual rather than the individual to the society, it can be quick for people to fall through the cracks, and us versus them mentality to develop without that level of compassion. And I see that the distinct line from an adult who has now walked off the legal and moral path and has done wrong, committed crimes, and a direct relationship back to the child within them who was never brought up in a way to understand the importance of those laws and those orders, so that they may be a productive member of society and live a life that ultimately will have the highest amount of utility for themselves as an individual, but also to the society with which they belong. And so when I hear educate the children, I think it's easy in our day and age to look at the word educate and look at it one-dimensionally, as the formal process of going to a school where certain knowledge is imparted, facts and opinions are imparted within from the governing body to the individual to say, hey, here's on your way. But one thing that I've come to see is that no institution can replace the value of the familial structure in terms of imparting not only knowledge but wisdom within an individual. And the difference between knowledge and wisdom will be a topic of a future video. So that one's for you, Nick. And I know I've talked about that in the past, and I will in the future. But there is a distinct difference in a goodness, an abundance of goodness being inherent in wisdom, that it may not necessarily be within just pure knowledge itself. Knowledge is a stale idea that can be used for good or can be used for bad. If I know how to rob a bank, I have knowledge of how to rob a bank. That doesn't necessarily mean that robbing a bank is good. Wisdom has a sense of right and wrong baked into it. Knowing how to do something and doing something are two different things, and should doing something is different than could do something. The ability to do something, and oftentimes those lessons and the minutia of that details is inculcated from a familiar structure where the adults in that structure, whether it be a nuclear family or something designed to mimic that, to imitate that, is to have a compassion and caring for the individual, the children, the young people, in their development with the ultimate end state, their destiny of sorts, to be a functioning adult. And we fail woefully in the undertaking of that responsibility all the time. How can I make such a claim? Well, we go back to adult male imprisoned for breaking the law, maybe doing something truly heinous, not an unjust incarceration, which is another topic. We trace that back to a lack of love, caring, attention, and education, true education, not in the one-dimensional sense that I spoke of earlier. Then the results are proof of the origin of that. I don't talk about my wife often. I'll have to have her on the channel eventually. She works with children who are oftentimes come from broken homes. We'll put it that way. And part of her job is to help them assimilate into society and to learn proper behaviors on how to interact with others, how to interact with themselves, so that they can be functioning adults in society. And somebody once said something to the effect of the worst sins that our society has committed them against our young and our children. And the stories of neglect, abuse that my wife has had to learn and imparted upon these vulnerable children, the most vulnerable of our society, is horrific. I've talked about human trafficking with U.S. Assistant Attorney Frank Williams, and especially human trafficking of minors, of children, as being maybe one of the most deplorable actions, or the most widely accepted deplorable actions that we as a society can agree on. Well, this is what events such as those, and human child sex trafficking, and lesser down the line, those actions or inactions oftentimes that we as a society, adult society, have or impart on those youth will have direct repercussions later on in life. And it's incumbent upon us to educate those children so that we don't have to deal with punishing the men later in life, and the injustices and the cruelty and the difficulty, the great expense that has. Not only for the expense of funding a system to arbitrate in as much as an unbiased way as possible, which is what we pride ourselves on here in the U.S., is having an unbiased, a blind lady justice system, even if we fail to do that sometimes. That's expensive. Not only in that manner, but think about the opportunity cost. If you have 1 million young men in jail who are at a net detriment to society in terms of their overall productivity, if you had half of them, a quarter of them, as highly functioning members of society, who knows the benefits we could reap as a society from having untold talent released back into society, and to help move us forward as we create our ever-growing legacy. So something that is extremely important and touches on a lot of I think key issues of our time. Thanks for writing that so many thousands of years ago, Pythagoras. Leave your comments or ideas in the comment section below. I'd love to hear what you guys think about this particular topic, or really this umbrella of topics that this quote brings up. Anyway, take care. Hope to talk to you guys soon.